The COVID-19 pandemic has hit hard the insurance sector, just like any other sector in the world. And this has forced insurance firms to find better ways to attend to their consumers. Now, on this episode of Business Redefined, we'll be sitting down with Gwen Kinisu, who is the CEO of Prudential, who is going to take us through progress over perfection. My name is Nina Shaban. Thank you for having us. Gwen, maybe we can start off with looking at the whole world and how it's been struggling with the COVID-19 pandemic, that has caused economic instability across the globe. So from where you see it, just give us a highlight on how the insurance sector is doing.
Okay. You're very welcome to Prudential today. I think maybe just to provide some context, what we're talking about today is principally about the life insurance industry. When we talk about COVID had a great and far-reaching impact on the economy. And this has mostly to do with all the things that support our economy. So anything that was being imported, for example, anything that had anything to do with logistics, affected the pricing of products, the pricing of the food we eat, etc. So there's that part. But then when we look at where we sit as life insurers, the impact of COVID has been far-reaching, because we had a lot of people who either got sick or who we lost. And as a result, as a life insurance industry, we ended up paying some significant claims to support the communities around us. On the health insurance side, there was, I think, mixed reactions in that whereas there were very high hospital bills for those affected, a lot of people decided to stay home and not visit hospitals because of the imminent risk they would be faced with. So for the health insurance, I think it was a mixed bag.
And with that said, how exactly has Prudential, how have you dealt with the loss ratio after COVID-19 and even during COVID, because we're still battling this pandemic?
Okay. So our approach to pricing is very risk profile based, in that we look at the customer that we're dealing with and then we price proportionate to the risk that they would be carrying. Now, fortunate for us, we have very good partnerships. And so working with our partners, we have been able to accumulate data over time that allows us to price well. So over the COVID period, we did incur some loss ratios as expected, because we're in the business of protection. And when a pandemic happens, that is, in our view, the opportunity for us to demonstrate why we exist. So we are happy to say that we paid some significant claims during COVID, but it was not detrimental to our financial standing. We, during the COVID time, introduced a free COVID product to provide extra security and protection for our customers. And this is not something that they had paid for. We have a joke within our offices that we inadvertently launched our free COVID benefit on the 1st of April. And the communication to our customers was, if you are our customer by 1st of January of 2020, when we made that announcement on 1st of April, you had free coverage. And that allowed you to, if you were hospitalized or if you ended up in ICU, we were giving you daily money for you to be able to pay for your bills. But then because we announced it on April 1, people thought it was an April Fool's joke. Oh. So I think I'm happy to say that we do what we do to provide coverage and to support the communities we support. And during a crisis such as that we have seen during COVID, it gives us a big opportunity to learn and relearn how we should price for our risk.
Still on matters COVID, across the globe, let's focus on Kenya. There's so many small and medium-sized enterprises that are coming up now. These are micro businesses. So how are you as an insurance company looking to milk from that?
So the way we look at it at Prudential is we look at it as what we call the SME and micro SME opportunity. Now, even before COVID hit, we had identified that as a segment that we wanted to focus on, because we believe that that is principally an excluded segment. When you think about your mama mboga who sells hamburger every day so that she can feed her family and pay rent and pay for fuel, etc. When she gets sick or when she gets a critical illness, what she will do is she'll shut down her business to be able to cater for her ill health, for example. Now, what that means is that her children and her family don't have food every day because her business is not able to sustain itself. So what we have done in that segment is to provide solutions that cater for hospital cash, which we think is a very relevant product for that segment. That for every day they are hospitalized, they are losing income. So we have rolled out products for that particular segment that allows them to have money to not only pay for their hospital bills on a daily basis, but also to feed themselves and their families. So that when they're ready to come back to the business, they can continue as if they had never stopped.
And with that said, Gwen, you're very big on progress over perfection. Let's hear your take on that.
Okay. So at Prudential, we look at ourselves as being in life insurance, and life insurance, from where we sit, is not something that you do today and you're gone tomorrow. It's a long-term play. And for us, long-term starts at 25 years. So the decisions we make today, we consistently ask ourselves, what impact will this have 25 years from now? Now, one of the things we are learning painfully is that the customer has disrupted. The way the customer consumes insurance has changed. We do not believe that we are where we need to be able to meet that need. And we therefore think that the only way for us to be able to understand that consumer is to walk that journey with them. And so one of the things we have tasked ourselves with is to build within our organization a culture of organizational agility. So what that means is that we iteratively make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. And so what we are after is progress over perfection, in the sense that we want our people to focus more on building momentum and then building the right habits to get better at serving the customer, as opposed to building a perfect product or solution and then placing it in front of the customer and they're saying, so what? Yeah. So the way we are approaching it is to say, we build a little bit, we test it on the customer, and then we keep reviewing and improving on it as we garner that customer feedback. And so that's one part. But then the other part is to do with the engine of our growth, which is our people. That we are encouraging our people to make mistakes, but also to learn from mistakes. That the messaging we have to them is that it's okay to fail, but it's not okay not to learn. Because we believe that as long as our people are continuously building their toolkit of skills, that they are very good at serving the customer, they are very good at dishing out solutions, then we become more competitive. So that's our thinking around how to make sure that as an organization, we have a culture that's future ready.
Would you say that that's how you would describe progress? What does progress look like to you?
So progress to Prudential means that we are getting better every day. Progress means that when we look back a couple of years from now, we are able to say that our people were at this level, but now they're so much better because we have provided them with the opportunities to develop themselves. But then also, more importantly, they have risen up to the challenge to say, this is where we need to go, and these are the skills that we require to get there. So it's that continuous improvement and that continuous building on the momentum with which we started. That is what we term as progress.
All right. Now, I want us to talk about the different generations. And according to some research, Generation Z are said to have zero patience, while millennials are perfectionists. Yeah. And I'm sure you have interacted with them, or you're currently interacting with them. So what would be your take on this?
So I think many things are said about millennials and Gen Z. And I think the facts on the table are that these guys have come into a world where there are smartphones, where you put food in a microwave, you actually make your tea in a microwave. You are hungry and need to get food, you don't think about cooking it, you think about ordering it, etc. So they've come into a generation where things happen very quickly. So inadvertently, you'd expect that patience is a very foreign concept for them. But then on the back of that is also the fact that they are the ones who are propelling the knowledge age, right? They are the ones who, when they are sick or they need an answer, they go to Google and get it instantly. They're the ones who are propelling logistics and delivery businesses and internet-based businesses, etc. So I think when you look at this cohort of individuals in the workplace, I think as leaders, the challenge on us is to bring them closer to the action and understand them and understand what it would take to get the most out of them. So that it's one thing to say they are impatient, but then it's another thing to ask ourselves, what do they bring to the table and how do you pull that out? Yeah, and I think the organizations that win are the ones who will be able to pull that out, because I believe that with that impatience comes a lot of agility. With that impatience comes new ways of doing things. Somebody said to me that they like to employ lazy people, and I thought that was an oxymoron. And they said that the reason why they like to employ lazy people is because lazy people will always find the fastest way or the fastest route to get a solution. And which customer doesn't want that? Right? The customer wants the simplest solutions to their very complex problem. So these are the guys then who would participate in building those solutions.
All right, and at that particular note, we are going to come back and find out how exactly we can shift and start prioritizing progress over perfection. But we need to take a quick break, and we shall be back with more. All right, so welcome back. Before we went on the break, we were having a conversation with the CEO of Prudential. This is Gwen Kinisu. I've got the name right?
Yes.
All right, fantastic. So we were talking about progress over perfection, and she was just about to give us tips on how we can shift, we can slowly move into progress and making sure that progress is better than perfection, right? So tell us about this shift and how it can be implemented. How do you prioritize progress over perfection?
Over the course of my career and working with people, one of the mantras I subscribe to is, if something is not working for you, change it. So if perfection is causing you and the people around you a lot of grief, then maybe you need to change the lens with which you look at life. And you need to ask yourself, then how then do I approach life? How do I work with other people to make sure that I get the most for them and for myself? So personally for me, I think the transition happened very, very slowly. One, being a parent is very, very humbling. Selling life insurance is extremely humbling. But also leading people who are very different from yourself requires that you take a step back and ask yourself, how do I get everybody to align on a vision, and how do you pull out their superpowers to make sure that they come to the party? So as I talk about that, then maybe the first thing to say is, for anyone who's starting out in their career and they're asking themselves, where do I start off? What do I prioritize? I think inadvertently, when you're starting out, your focus should be on how to become very good at executing. Yeah, and then as you grow into leadership, you then need to find a way of balancing out being a very good planner and being a very good executor, and finding that thin balance, because it's a thin balance. But over time, I think it's important to also determine and establish what is urgent versus what is important. Research shows us that the most effective leaders are the ones who spend 80% of their time on what is important. Examples of what is important is anything that prepares the organization to be future ready. So new opportunities, building relationships, solving big problems. So as you think about what things to focus on and prioritize, is to ask yourself, where am I in my career? At what stage am I in my career? And then how do I ensure that I focus on the right things, so that those right things then give me the desired results?
All right, now, and how would you say organizations can actually support this particular shift when it comes to their employees, especially?
So I think the big one is culture. I think there's many ways to slice it up, but I think the big one is culture. And culture is people say that culture will eat strategy for breakfast. And I know it's trite, but I believe it. I believe that you can have the best strategy in play, But if your culture is wrong, then you'll not be able to execute on that strategy. And so when it comes to building a culture where you are communicating to your people that we need to build the right habits, we need to do the right things at the right time, then eventually what you then end up with is something that looks almost perfect. I don't have a better way to put it, yeah? Because if you focus on the right inputs and you focus your teams on doing the right things over time, as opposed to trying to create this illusion of perfection which everybody is breaking their backs to achieve, and you get your team aligned on breaking that up into pieces that can be achieved and then progressively building the momentum for them to be able to achieve those particular outcomes, I think you're then building a culture where there's even more innovation. Because out of those little projects come new ideas, come new ways of working that then support the bigger agenda of making sure that you provide competitive solutions in the marketplace.
All right, and you've touched on innovation. It could be one of the biggest challenges you're facing as an insurance company or in the insurance sector. Could we please shed more light on that?
So the data shows us that in Kenya, our penetration is just under 3%. So that means we have a headroom of 97% to go. So that means out of every 100 Kenyans, 97 don't have insurance. So the question is, why don't they have insurance? I think the answer to that, and I don't have the complete answer, but from where I see it, the way I see it, is that number one, people are not aware of insurance. People don't know what they need to know about insurance to lead them to make that decision to then purchase it. And then secondly, for those who know about it, they don't know enough about why they need it, right? And they're not able to make a connection between what they need and then what insurance comes in to satisfy. And then thirdly, I think is a responsibility of us as insurers to say, how do we create insurance products that serve needs that are not explicit for the customer, so that the customer, when they think about this need, they see the insurance industry as being the player that will serve that need. You earlier asked me about the microinsurance space. And I think when we talk about needs that are not explicit, it's us asking ourselves, when somebody has a small business, what is their biggest pain point? And how do we meet that pain point for them? As opposed to saying the terms and conditions of the policy are such and such, and therefore the only solution we can provide you with is what's already on the shelf. And so when I speak about innovation, I'm saying that innovation must come from the feedback that the customers are giving us, either directly or indirectly. And then that presents us the opportunity to be able to meet those needs.
Fair enough. And as we wind up, Gwen, we've seen a lot of mergers when it comes to insurance companies. Would you say Prudential is headed that way, or what is your take when it comes to insurance companies merging?
Again, going back to your previous question on why people do not buy insurance. And we know as an industry that we've got some way to go in building trust within our potential customers and even with our existing customers. And part of building that trust stems from us fulfilling and honoring our promises. That if somebody took a policy 20 years ago and they need to claim it today, that we need to be available to pay that claim and to make sure that it is a hassle-free process for that customer. Now, part of the mergers and acquisitions that are happening today are led by that there is a need for capital adequacy that insurance companies are required to have so that they can be able to pay claims up to a substantial level. And so as a result, you have insurers coming together to solidify that financial base to make sure that they can pay claims when they materialize. Is Prudential headed that way? The future will tell. What I will say is that our ambitions are big in this market. We see ourselves as a young player. We see ourselves in a place where we've got to think differently about insurance. And the reason we've got to think differently is because we're spending so much of our time with the customers trying to understand what it is that they need so that we are not in a hurry to roll out products, but we are in a hurry to understand what the customer needs, so that even if we are slow to roll out products, we want to roll out products that are relevant and that the customer will say, this is good for me. And this has provided me with an opportunity to protect what is important to me. We all have a desire to provide those we love, especially the children that we have, with what we didn't get. Yeah? And part of that process is for us to say that I'm building a financial base that is stable enough. But in the process of doing that, we focus very heavily on accumulation of wealth, but we don't think about the protection of that wealth. Now, what we want to do as Prudential, and what we are doing today, is to say, how do we partner with you to help you to protect that wealth, and hence protect what is important to you? So that in partnering with us, if that risk does materialize, you're not brought back to zero. Yeah? For most of us, poverty is right over here. That if we make one mistake, or if a risk hits you, then you go back to square one. Yeah? You go back to where you started. And that's why insurance is important, that it allows you not to have to go back to square one, but it allows you to go back to where you had reached. And that's what we aim to do as Prudential. So our ambitions are big, but we think we'll only get there when we educate our customer base and when we partner with them to make them realize that protection is as important as accumulation.
All right. So that's it for this particular episode of Business Redefined. We were talking all matters insurance sector with the CEO of Prudential, Gwen Kinisu. Thank you so much. Please do enjoy the rest of your viewing. My name is Nina Shaban.